What's up, guys? Yeah, I'm laying here on the floor, looking like a goddamn troll doll. Um, just feeling it. Feeling the floor, feeling like laying down, no energy. I was thinking about um Riley's death really didn't happen in a vacuum, and honestly, it feels more like it happened in a trash compactor. I've kind of talked about this before, and it's one of the things I always mention in I think a lot of my thinking in my videos, because it takes a lot of my attention and thought in real life too. But just the poly crisis, the everything, things collapsing, especially in the last few years, the way that COVID pandemic was really such a breaking point for kind of so many institutions showing their ass of how little power and help they actually have, and then just everything. People getting the most, like poverty being completely like slashed just from the COVID money and all the benefits given, and then having those taken away, and people being forced into poverty, people being evicted, everything getting going. Like, overdose deaths are called deaths of despair, and I think there's other things that count as deaths of despair, but and that kind of speaks to that too. Like, it's no surprise that places like West Virginia, which um and Appalachians broadly, and maybe the Rust Belt and a lot of other areas in the US, their overdose rates are so high, and the opioid epidemic is so, it's multifaceted, and there's so many things that went into it, but it's linked to those towns like being economically devastated. And yeah, just there were so many confounding variables, and just the state of the world. It really affected Riley's mental health. I mean, they basically graduated from college, and then boom, COVID hits. Like, navigating the transition out of college when I did it before COVID, that was still even hard. And a lot of people struggle with that. Like, what do you do when you're an adult? What do you do? How do you make friends when you don't have the structure? How do you get a job? What kind of jobs do you get? Like, Riley had to worry about that while also dealing with the beginnings of a lot of their mental state worsening, and not being able to fully know, or I don't know, but then also just locked down, and they were living with a roommate but just working at Fred Meyer. And everyone knows, like, these last 3 years have been hard, and there's just, besides the day-to-day struggles that the world has been hard too, like, Riley really felt the pain of others and the pain of the world, and just was really perturbed by climate change and other existential threats. And really, like, it was one thing that we talked about a lot. Like, they would usually come to me, and we would talk like politics or history or whatever news is going on, and that always felt good to be able to be kind of a voice and a different perspective on that, because in some ways, I'm able to like detach myself more, and kind of like, for me, I'm an information seeker, and so like reading the news and like knowing a lot of the climate change terms that people like don't know, and like certain things that could happen, because that's like really stressful to think about. But anyway, so Riley would come to me, and those always felt like very good conversations to have, and I was glad that I could do that and be that for them in that way. But it's also interesting, like, I probably had an extra level of like not being panic inducing, or maybe not even being as like political on my Instagram and in my art and my sharing, just because I knew that could be something that could like really affect Riley more and could be a trigger. And so I don't know if I was like self-censoring, but I definitely um like considered Riley and everything that I do. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. But it's interesting. Like, should I have been more fiery? Should I have, like, everything that upsets me politically in the news, should I be sharing about that? So they felt like that I was also feeling that, but I don't know. And this is just me, like, over individualizing my impact. But anyway, shit's been rough, and like, it's no surprise that there's like a huge increase in overdose deaths and mental health issues and relationship issues and depression, and just like, there's a lot of stuff going on, and so much of it is out of our control. And we live in this country of guilt and shame that wants you to take up everything upon yourself, and to blame yourself, and to blame your actions or evilness or your wickedness or whatever, to bring it back in on yourself. And that already has always been something that really upsets me. But the fact that Riley, that was one of the things that hurt them the most, was getting into these cycles of guilt and shame and guilt and shame. And especially when their perceptions could get out of reality a little bit, that guilt and shame is just so much extra powerful. And I really hate the way that our country is such a guilt and shame based country. And there's so many ways that we perpetuate that, just societally and individually, and in so many of our structures, and the ways that we act, and the ways that we are taught. And part of me wants to fall into that guilt and shame spiral, especially with their death and being one of their main supports. It's like, oh crap, what did I do wrong? What could I do better, have done better? But especially with the fact that guilt and shame was so harmful to Riley, and like, it ate them up inside. Like, that makes me want to try even harder just to disregard it. I sneer at the guilt and shame that my body wants me to feel and to fall into. But I'm just gonna keep it moving, keep it grooving, make fun art, have good times, do things that I think would make Riley happy and proud of me. So anyway, this concludes my laying on the ground talking up into the camera. I hope everyone takes it sleazy, buckos.